Welcome to the Freedom CEO podcast. It's about becoming the chief decision maker over your life in order to step into a life of freedom. From business, health, wealth, charity, and giving back to just doing life on your own terms. I am your host, Shae Invidiata. I am an award-winning activist, change maker, and a multifaceted impact entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in business, philanthropy, and health and wellness. In this space, I'm going to be bringing you insights, not just from me, but from incredible thought leaders around the globe to help you start making decisions towards living a life of freedom so you can live a life you love. Are you ready, guys? Because we are going all in. Today's episode is going to have you really start to think differently about not only the school system, but about what your kids are eating while they're at school. I had the pleasure of bringing on Hilary Boynton, who is the author and founder of School of Lunch, a training academy and culinary consulting company. But let me tell you, this is no regular training academy or culinary consulting company. This is incredible what this woman is doing in the school systems and how she is working with children. Hilary is a mother of 5 who underwent a transformative experience years ago. Where modern pharmacology failed her family, she was able to heal chronic disease through the power of food and nutrition. Hilary then set out to reawaken culture to the value of preparing and cooking through the framework of ancestral techniques and practices that are anchored in unique observations by Dr. Weston Prince. Today, she is on the show to share some of these techniques, her journey, and help you start to think about food differently with your children. Welcome to the Freedom CEO podcast. I'm your host, Shae Invidiata, and I am so excited to welcome today's guest. It's one of my absolute, not just favorite topics, but I think one of the most important topics, especially of our times, talking about food. Is it actually real? What is it? And the nutrition that it serves our body. It should be fuel, act like medicine, yet today it really functions more like poison and toxins in our body. I'm so excited today to have on the show Hilary Boynton to come on and talk about not just her journey and how she got passionate into the food industry, but she's going to share with us what she's doing now. And I think we're going to learn some really good, amazing value today. So Hilary, thanks for joining. So happy to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
So let's dive in. Tell me about your story. You know, you're doing a lot of work in the nutrition space, and we're going to tap into that. You're the founder of School of Lunch. You're the head of nutrition at the Manzanita School. And most people don't just wake up and get passionate about something like this. So tell us a little bit about your background and your why. Why did you get into this?
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep it really short, but basically through my own health journey of falling for the fat-free propaganda in the 90s in high school and, basically almost a decade, really being strict on not eating any fat. And so that led me towards ultra-processed sugary foods and just, and I was an athlete at the time. So really working hard and burning my body and then replenishing with zero nutrition basically. And I went on and played soccer in college and again, still hadn't woken up to food as medicine, any of that. And then got married shortly after college, married at 25, boom, found myself pregnant at 26 and then miscarried right away. And then went on to have 4 more miscarriages over the next 3 years. So super wake up call of just what is happening? I'm 26. Why can't I hold a baby? No one talked to me about nutrition, and maybe I'm deficient in some fat soluble vitamins or things that you need to hold a healthy pregnancy. I went on to do in vitro and ended up with triplets. And then I know, right? 2 boys and a girl, life was magical. I'm woo, 3 years of infertility, 3 babies, we're good. And then I decided maybe we should try and have 1 more and see what it's like just to have 1 baby. And boom, I got pregnant on my own. And when he was 6 months old, I was pregnant again with my fifth baby. So all of a sudden I had five, careful what you wish for, right? All of a sudden I had five babies under the age of 4. I was totally overwhelmed, totally, just inundated with just surviving every day. And of course, like joyful that I had all these beautiful children, but I hadn't really woken up to a food yet at this point either. I kind of like wanted to feed my babies, like organic had come in, I guess. And, I was trying to make their own baby food, but I wasn't really taking care of myself at all. I was living off like some sort of balance bar or something. But it was still like processed, as the triplets got older, it was like organic pirate booty or cereals. Like if it said organic, I was again like focused on if it says organic, then it's fine. I didn't really look at any of the other ingredients. Anyway, my fourth baby was my impetus to change. He had eczema head to toe at age, 2 months. And he was scratching for like 2 hours every night. I had to pin him to my body. And I ended up meeting a woman, ironically, through trying to change school lunches. He's now 17. And she introduced me to the Weston A. Price Foundation. And she had said to me, you've got to get this child on raw milk. And I was like, what's raw milk? I had never heard of it. I was drinking my fat-free skim milk over here, but I was so desperate. I had tried, steroid creams and Zyrtec twice a day. I'd really tried everything and was resistant to that. But I finally, a friend of the family who's a pediatrician said, you've got to put him on steroid cream. He's suffering. And I did, but and he slept through the night and things were good. I was like, okay, this is helping. And then as that went on, I noticed that if I didn't put the steroid cream on, his eczema would flare. So that mama instinct, the intuition said, like, this isn't getting to the root cause. This is just a Band-Aid. And so when this woman told me about raw milk, I was just like, what? Like, I'll try anything. She said she had healed her son of asthma with raw milk. So I put him on raw milk and cod liver oil. And literally in a matter of a few months, he's completely healed. Like no asthma, no eczema, no allergies, like his body just like healed. And I was like, what the hell just happened? Like, real food just healed my baby. So that was my big dive into all of this. It was like, there was no turning back. I couldn't get enough information. And we have a child with epilepsy. So I was on a deep dive to try and help her. We also had like, 3 boys with speech delays, 1 with tics. My eczema baby was borderline dyspraxic. His enamel didn't grow in right on his teeth. Like all these things that were kind of like, oh, this is just normal. We'll put him in speech therapy. And it was all kind of normalized as just like kids have issues. But looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I could have prevented a lot of this if I had better nutrition. And so I dove into the GAPS diet, which is the gut and psychology syndrome and the gut and physiology syndrome, to heal and seal our guts, our microbiomes, to really bring the health of our microbiomes back as a family. And this is basically a 2-year protocol. It can be for people. And we did it for actually 2 years, but there was nothing really there to inspire me visually. I'm a visual learner. And this is when blogging like just came out. So any real food bloggers, where there were like a few of them. So I was like grasping at straws. So anyway, I ended up writing a book called the Heal Your Gut Cookbook, which is our journey through the GAPS diet as a family of 7, and designed to just inspire people that you can heal eating beautiful, nutritious, delicious foods. And it's actually quite simple when you just get back to what, how we've eaten for millennia. And so I wrote this book, handed it over to the publisher. Next week later, my husband was diagnosed with throat cancer. So that took our whole journey up like the next level. And that ultimately brought us from Massachusetts to California for just to get out of stress, a more alternative way of healing, getting into the sunshine, all the good stuff. And there we were introduced to this tiny little nature-based school. Literally his first day out of bed, we drove up to this mountain town called Topanga. And I fell in love with the chef there. She was like, I really want to roast a whole goat, and the kids have caught their own fish and we cooked it up. And so I was just like, we have to go here. Yeah. And then as the school was in its first year, and then as the school grew, they outsourced the food. And that's where I was just like, wait a minute, it went more back to a standard American diet. And I was just like, after all we had been through and all of my hard work to try, and the triplets were like 10 at this point. So I'd really been working for years to regain our health. And I wasn't about to let, big giant hoagie rolls and random, meat that I don't know where it came from enter my kid's body. So I stepped in as the snack coordinator. And then halfway through the year, I became the lunch lady. And so for the last 8 years, I've been feeding about it's K through 12 now, about 150 to 175 people every day. And I can just say without a doubt, it is like so it's such a beautiful experience to watch children thrive and to reverse addictions to, highly palatable ultra processed foods, and adults as well to have their eyes open and the light bulbs go off, just like what happened to me. And so now we've started School of Lunch, where we train anyone and everyone who wants to learn and live and eat and thrive this way. You don't have to aspire to be a school lunch chef. You can just want to take control of your own health and your family's health and prevent disease and then be the ripple. So that's, hopefully we got through that before too long. Yeah,
I
that's
love
my
it.
passion behind it. I just know it's so 100% foolproof when you just get back to what's real and block out all the propaganda and all the noise and just get back to our intuition.
It's such an incredibly powerful journey, and miraculous too, like just even your birthing story is like so beautiful. It's so powerful. And you've brought up this word a couple of times. You just mentioned it, propaganda. And I feel that we live in such a time now more than ever, where there is so much conditioning. There's so much repetitive language. There's a narrative, and there is this propaganda. And your journey, going back to the beginning, that you had mentioned that, I love, as much as possible on here, I try to break it down to be really simple for people, because I've got everybody on here is from like different walks of life. Some people might be nutrition because they're more into business, and some other vice versa. And so you had mentioned the fat-free propaganda. There's also propaganda around raw milk being really horrible. And some people don't even know what raw milk is. So before we even go further, can we start, what is the fat-free propaganda? And then we'll shift into raw milk a little bit. But, shed some light on that.
Yeah. I mean, it came in, I guess it was like the 90s, and it was like, fat is going to clog your arteries and you're going to have a heart attack, and fat is going to make you fat. And I had this body dysmorphia. I really developed an eating disorder around it. It was just so pervasive and so persuasive. It just really got into my mind, and my mom and my sister. Everyone kind of all of us now, who were living in that time, teenagers, we all fell for it. It's just I don't know how, looking back, I'm like, how did I fall for all that? But it was just so persuasive. So it was just fat. And if you visually think fat, of course it would clog an artery, but it's so not true, right? We need saturated fats. We need animal fats. We evolved eating animal fats, and that's what, our cells are made of. And so it's so, protective for us. And so now I'm eat so much fat. I'm like, if you could have told my 18-year-old self that I would be eating, half a stick of raw butter a day and drinking whole milk, I never would have believed you. But it's so liberating and satiating and all of that. So I just really encourage people to not be afraid of the good fats. There are good fats, and there are newfangled fats, like the vegetable oils and the quote unquote seed oils are very dangerous and just really destroying our mitochondria. So we have to be awake to all these processed, industrialized, packaged foods. Every restaurant is using them. They're everywhere. And it's really sweeping across the globe. So, which is really sad, because traditional cultures are, starting to include these in their diets, and it's really sad. So we have to just, again, go back to our intuition and think of how we evolved eating, how our brains grew, how we got here.
Yeah. It's so true. Even, more recently, I've been having some conversations with people around the whole raw milk, and, we'll tap into that. But even if you can't get your hands on raw milk, it's better to have the whole milk, as you just mentioned that too, versus having this fat-free and removing, the wholeness, the nutrition that actually is actually why you should, if you're consuming dairy. And so let's just chat a little bit about raw milk.
So I can explain that if you want.
Yeah, please do, because you're the expert on it. And, people all the time hear it and they're like, what the hell is raw milk?
Right.
No. Yeah.
Well, it's if you think about, it's really only been 100+ years, right, since we've kind of veered off track. But, back the turn of the century or so, there was industrialization. People were moving into the cities, and then they were bringing the cows into the cities, which is not, that's very different from cows on pasture, right, out in the green grass and getting the sunshine. And so they were drinking the swill from the distilleries, and that's not their natural diet. So the cows were sick, that people were getting sick, babies were getting sick. There was a lot of filth in the streets. It was just a different time. There was no refrigeration. Like, it was just a very different time. But so pasteurization came in kind of to solve that problem and sterilize everything. But what we didn't highlight is that the cows on pasture were still producing this beautiful milk, life-giving milk, right? And so pasteurization, that propaganda, that narrative, that just took off. And that's still the narrative today, that we need to sterilize everything. But raw milk has everything inherent in it that is needed to digest it. Like the lactase is the enzyme needed to digest lactose. And that's completely destroyed when we pasteurize and ultra pasteurize the dairy, and then homogenizing when, people didn't want to see the fat cap on the top. I mean, now I'm like, oh, look at that fat cap. It's so gorgeous. But so they homogenized it to suspend all the fat globules throughout the dairy so that you couldn't see the fat. And so that denatures the beauty of the raw milk as well. So if we can just think back to, again, like you said, simple. My French elder told me, is one of my biggest mottos: simplicity is gourmet. Like, don't mess with things. Just that if you keep them in their natural state, it's designed, perfectly. So it's that we've messed with it. And now, we're basically, when you have an ultra pasteurized milk, it's basically like dead bacteria. You're just drinking a dead product. There's nothing living in it anymore. So a lot of people who are lactose intolerant, can drink raw dairy. Most of them, so it's just really, there's a lot of misinformation about it out there, and it's very scary. In my cooking classes that I used to teach, and even to this day, I'd say raw dairy is the scariest thing for a mom. Even when I first put my kids on the raw milk, I was like, literally just like, am I going to kill my kids right now? Like, I was in Massachusetts. It wasn't legal. And, and then you think about it logically, like, okay, people in California are drinking it. People in Connecticut, I think it's legal there. They're drinking it. They're not dropping dead, right? So obviously you want to know your farmer and make sure they have best practices. But now we've been drinking it for like 17 years, and my kids drink about almost 10 gallons a week between all of us. And so, I never look back, and I can't say enough good things about it. And fermented raw dairy, we drink a lot of raw kefir, and it's just, that's my superpower. I think it's just so magical. So there's so many good things about it. And so I just encourage people to just not be in fear, find your local farmer and ask questions, get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's delicious too.
And I would say, like, all farmers are, I should say all farmers, so many of them are very open to help educate and also share. At least up here in Canada, the few that I have, obviously there's a lot of liability that gets put onto them from the government, so it's like almost like signing your life over, right? You have to sign a waiver that says, like, you're not taking medical advice from them. And, if you die, like the one that I had to sign was like, if I die, it's not the farmer's fault. It was like,
oh my gosh.
yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
But people are like getting sick from spinach and like all sorts of things. It's not like that's being like yanked from the shelves and there's all this like propaganda to not eat spinach because you might die. It's like, of course, with everything you have to, that's why knowing your farmer is so valuable, right?
And I think too, it's more just them having to play the game with the government,
right? Yeah,
restrictions in order to maintain their farming license, right? In order to produce, and because there has been so much propaganda around you getting sick, you could die, that they have to put that in there. But there's ways, like, in Canada, like if you're wanting, and even in the US, like if it's not legal in your state, you can find a farmer and you basically become a member. You like a share of the farm. So you're technically like an owner of it, which allows them to basically, you're paying for it, but it allows them to give you milk versus them just selling to the open market. So that's kind of, the workaround in that. But one thing that I've shared with people, and I would love kind of just like your thoughts on this analogy, or like this parallel, if you will, because I still think a lot of people, it's hard for them to really accept like the benefits of raw milk. And I parallel it to when a woman is breastfeeding, and there's nothing that is done to the breast milk before giving it to the baby. It's just literally transferred over,
Right.
and the amount of nutrition and the minerals and the healing, not just even but the healing effects that come from breast milk. And I know women, and I'm sure you know women too, that actually have pumped and they freeze their breast milk, or they'll put their breast milk into like veggie capsules to be able to take them, months, or
Beyond.
later on if the child gets sick, or even putting the breast milk like as on top of eczema,
Yes.
to
Yeah.
heal skin. So that's how I kind of share it with people, is going, think of, we can all acknowledge, for the most part, I think most people can acknowledge that there's a lot of healing benefits. There's a lot of nutrition value in breast milk. And that's basically essentially what you're getting with raw milk,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I put my baby, I had to stop. My fifth baby broke up with me at like 6 months. I think he was just like, you're crazy. There's so much going on in this house. I was all stressed out. And I had put him on formula, which I didn't really want to do. And then Sally Fallon, who's the founder of the Weston A. Price Foundation, and a huge proponent of raw dairy, I asked her, when can I put him on raw milk? I was kind of waiting for that year mark that whoever tells you that's the mark. He was 10 months old, and she's like, put him on raw milk. So he's been on raw milk since he was 10 months old.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, it's just a superfood in my opinion. It's just natural. If you think back to, everything ties back to nature, right? Like we're part of nature. That's my biggest epiphany that I always try and talk about on a podcast, because it's really like when we see ourselves as not separate, and then we look at things in nature as miraculous. And like the head of school at Manzanita, he at the first camping trip I went on, he had us all circled up in a big circle in the redwoods. And he was just like, I just want to take a moment and have gratitude for these massive redwoods that have held space for us this whole week. And at the base of every redwood are billions of microbes keeping them healthy and alive. And at that moment, I looked at him and I was like, in my head, like, you are a redwood. You have billions of microbes at your base keeping you healthy and alive. And you're no different. Like, so just as you wouldn't pour gasoline around a tree and expect it to thrive, or your plants or whatever, why do we do that to ourselves? Like, we need to flip the mirror and look at ourselves as just as miraculous, and have that reverence for ourselves and that respect. And if we could unzip ourselves and see the miracles that are happening every second of every day to keep us walking and talking and thriving, doing all the things we want to do, then we might think twice before we eat, Doritos or M&Ms or all these things that our bodies don't know how to assimilate, and there's no nutrition to absorb. So it's just making our bodies work so hard to figure out how to process this so-called food, right? It's a food-like substance, I guess, right? So when you go back to simplicity, go back to what nature provides, your body knows what to do with it. Yeah. So it's that simple.
So let me ask you, because, I hear what you're saying and I very much agree, like with everything that you said. We live in such a world where it's really challenging, because we live in an instant now culture, right? Mm-hmm. Like, most people don't even go to the grocery store to go get groceries anymore. You can order them on an app on your phone and they show up. And the system has been so designed to condition us that ease is better than effort. Right. And the effort of seeking out quality and good food. And you have humans like Bill Gates on the planet that today is the largest owner of farmland in the United States. And he is on this mission to make everything synthetic, and, even talks about how rich nations like the US and even Canada, where, I am, that they should shift entirely to synthetic beef. And I'm like, synthetic, that's a toxin. Synthetic is a toxin. It's the opposite of nutrition. It's the opposite of health. And, and a lot of people probably don't even know this, but for example, McDonald's, the soil where all of the potatoes are grown and their carrots and the onions, that's all owned by Bill Gates, And so when you have somebody who his mission is not to enhance nutrition, and I'm going to say uphold health for humanity, but really it's a system that makes us more sick. and then relying on pharmaceutical, as opposed to getting back to ancestral roots and, becoming, not even just becoming one with nature, but like recognizing that we are that, as you were just saying,
Right. Yeah.
right? And that even just the quality of your soil these days, right? Like has been so depleted because of the chemicals and the pesticides and all of these things. So I say that all to say is like, what is your recommendation, or what do you say to people who really do actually want to adopt this lifestyle, or be able to go out and seek, like, where do I go and get good food? Where do I get like actual whole food that's, not fake? And, and actually just before I let you answer that, we were just talking before we started, I was sharing with Hilary that this morning on TikTok, and you could go on TikTok and find this. Maybe I'll put it in the show notes. Actually, I'll do that. I'll put it in the show notes so you don't have to go search on TikTok for this. But there's a video that's going around that's gone viral of people from all over different parts of the United States going shopping, whether it's to Costco or to their local grocery store, and buying things like watermelon, avocados, bananas, even blueberries. And you literally can't break the watermelon. It's like bendy. It's almost like what they say in the video. It feels like Play-Doh. Like the avocado starts to feel like Play-Doh. It's like super rubbery, supery bendy. And thankfully, some of these moms and a few of the dads are like, this can't actually be food. Like this can't actually be good. But when this is what's in the grocery stores, it becomes so hard to seek out good nutrition.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so true. And, back to your point about synthetic and stuff, I don't think we're going to tech our way out of this mess, right? So I think for all the moms and dads out there and anybody who's listening, it's like we have to prioritize our health. We have to make the time, and we have to slow down, and we have to decide that it's a priority. Because once you get that cancer diagnosis, once you get that frying pan to the head with the kid that won't stop, scratching, or the cancer diagnosis, or the autoimmune, whatever it is, or infertility, you spend all your time and all your money chasing health. You chase what you had, or you're in a hospital bed and you're not able to coach your kids' soccer games, go on a family vacation, go to their graduation because you're sick. And so my $1 million question has always been, how do you wake people up before that wake-up call? And I think, honestly, my reflection is that it's human nature to wait for the wake-up call. But I think we're having this collective awakening. It's almost like, I was like, the other day I had this epiphany. It's like almost like a near-death experience. Like we're getting to this point where you're kind of seeing like that, we almost have to like die to come back to realize like we're just so close to like the brink of it, that more and more people are seeing that this is not real. This is not reality. This is not how life is supposed to be. We're supposed to be living and thriving. We're not supposed to be, having 60% of our kids with a chronic illness, and 93% of our population is metabolically unhealthy here in the United States. It's just like we're in this, really fast moving train that's left the station. And if we don't kind of decide that it's a priority and start talking about these things, then we're, like I said, the train's already left the station. So we have to get smart quickly, and we have to start supporting our local farmers, because if they go away and Bill Gates takes over everything, then we're beholden to big ag, right? So, I go to the farmers markets whenever I can. We have shoppers that go to the farmers markets. 80% or so of our school lunches is sourced locally. Those are the people that are taking care of our soil. Those are the, they're carrying on tradition, the heritage, the culture of, I talked to a fisherman yesterday who was just like, this is like a dying breed. It was so sad to me. The number of fishing boats locally that have gone down from 5,000 to 2,000 to 450. It's just declining. And we don't realize in this fast-paced world that our farmers need us and we need them. They are producing the healthiest food on the planet. And so it's about, I've said this many times too, it's about our generation. I think it's our calling to become the quote unquote ancestors in training, where we have to step into the work to relearn what was once common knowledge and passed down from generation to generation, because we're on the brink of losing it. So we have to step into the work and earn our street cred. We have to relearn it, and it is work. But that's why we say at School of Lunch, we're joyfully disrupting the trend of chronic illness in this next generation. I added joyfully like a couple of years ago because I'm like, we have to have fun while doing it, right? We can get in this like mindset of fear and everything, like the world is ending and everything's going, whatever. It's like all downhill. But what's the point of living, right? If we're going to live in fear and just put the blinders on and keep going and hope that things turn around, it's like, why don't we start stepping into the work joyfully, supporting one another, having those conversations with our farmers? And that's what I think, and collectively, like sitting down and having a meal together. It's so beautiful at the school to watch these little 5-year-olds sitting with, all the way up to the 18-year-olds and the teachers and the mentors, and everyone's outside in nature's having a beautiful local seasonal nutrient dense meal together. And that's where like your cells light up and you have a feeling of like, this feels good. This feels right. This is what I want. And so that's what we're trying to do, is inspire people to want in, like this is such a good way to live. You should be high on life. You should be eating foods that make you feel so good that you're just high on life. But I think most people don't know what it feels like to feel good. And they're on that kind of hamster wheel. And I've been there. I've been the single mom. I'm now divorced. I've been the single working mom, feeding 5 kids, trying to survive. But you can keep it simple. Again, simplicity is gourmet. Oftentimes we'd have 2 fried eggs with avocado and sliced tomato. I'm like, this is dinner. Like, but it's real. I know where it's from. It's nutrient dense.
Yeah.
And you're fed. It doesn't have to be like, I need to order, and you're saving so much money,
Totally.
So anyway, I hope that.
And I think there's like, and I think what you said is really beautiful about just wanting to start having people like ask the question and become curious about a better way, and tapping back into ancestral and nature. And so, even like right now, I'm in Toronto, and when I'm in Toronto, I have a condo here. So this is like where I'm concrete box in the sky. I also live in Costa Rica, and when I'm there, I've got a house there, and like that's a very different climate. And in both areas, in Costa Rica, I have bananas that grow on my property, and I'm able to also have like my garden there that, different vegetation. But there's so many different solutions, like just even in a condo, there's a lot of things that you can actually grow in small spaces that can support very organic and natural, healthy diet, right, in a condo. Or like vertical farming, for example, to me is fascinating, where like you don't need a huge backyard. You don't need a lot of space. You need good soil. It's about really it. You need some sun, you need some rain or some water, and you can grow so much food vertically versus feeling like you need to have like acres to be able to have all these different crops, and catering it to your own family, like household. Like for me, I don't care for potatoes. I don't eat potatoes. It's just like not my jam. So that's just not something I would like grow. And you see like how much space you need for like potato farming. So it's like, well, just like grow what you actually enjoy to eat, no different than going to the grocery store, right? So I think there's like there's also just like simple things that if, I don't know, maybe you're in Toronto or you're in a big city, and the idea of having to deal with a farmer or go find a farmer might be overwhelming in itself because you're outside of the city. I will say many farmers that are in and around big cities, they actually make their schedules. Like my farmers come every Tuesday to my area and they do a drop. So as long as you've established a relationship, there's many other people that usually want also from that farmer, and they do have different drop points probably in your area. And so there's always a solution. There's always a workaround. I think in the beginning, it just takes that much more effort. As I said, we live in this instant now ease, like we want everything easy versus applying a bit of effort. But to your point, that effort being put in now is the prevention to allow you to live a strong and healthy life versus getting sick. And then it's going to require even more effort when you're not feeling good.
More effort and not a lot of joy. Yeah. And so, I ran an Amish co-op after I discovered the raw milk. I met an Amish family, and they needed someone to help run their co-op in Massachusetts. They were from Pennsylvania. And for 6 years, I ran a private membership co-op because I wanted everyone to have access to this beautiful food. And so I just got creative, and and for people who are familiar with the Weston A. Price Foundation, maybe you can put that link in your show notes, but they have chapters all around the world designed. They have chapter leaders who are designed to connect people to their local food system. So also just finding like-minded people, if you have one person who can help, who's on the same page, and you can kind of be in it together, because it can be a lonely road when you have this wake up and you're like, I want to change everything, and it can be overwhelming. But if you have a friend or someone to help, keep you on track, or to bounce ideas off of, or share in driving to and from a farm, whatever it is, it's such a rewarding, liberating experience to have that sovereignty over your body and what you put into your body. And that it's intentional. It's been intentionally, grown and raised with love.
Totally. So. And, I'll just say this as well. The last thing Big Pharma needs, the last thing these big corporations need, the last thing Bill Gates needs is any more of our money, right? Like, so supporting your local farmers, that they do, it's a labor of love, it's their passion. And usually it's multi-generations, it's usually like the kids have gone in and then their kids have taken it over. And that in itself, I love that, knowing like you're supporting like the lineage of life work.
Yes. And so important to hold on to that. Yeah. And it's hard work. I mean, so when people look at the prices, like my daughter's working at a farm right now, and they're growing dahlias, flowers. And it's just like every day, the watering and the weeding, they're weeding everything by hand. And it's like so much work. So when you look at like a bouquet of flowers at the farmer's market, I'm like, that is worth every bit of $15 or whatever they're charging for that, because it is like it's so much work, and it is a labor of love, like you said. And to really tend to the soil and the land is such a, it's so important. It's everything. If we don't have healthy soil, we don't have healthy food, and then we don't have healthy humans. So again, we have to return back. And so getting your kids involved is so important from as young an age as possible. Get them up on the counter, cracking eggs, take them to the farm, understanding where their food comes from. It should be a joyful experience. I think also sharing it within the family, so that one person, the responsibility isn't falling on the shoulders of one. I think most often the moms are like trying to hold it all together, and you might be sick yourself, struggling with autoimmune or something. You have a sick kid and you're working, and you're just like, how can you do it all? So you have to share. Like we used to be more in community, and this responsibility was, divided up amongst many, not just one person. And we weren't taught how to cook, many of us, right? So like, unless you had a grandmother that was passionate about it or happened to pass it down to you, I think most of us in my generation, we just weren't really taught these life skills of how to properly nourish ourselves. So we have to like pat ourselves on the back for like where we are in this journey, and just be like, okay, no shame, just step into the work wherever you are and just decide to do one thing. You can't do it all at once, but just start, right? Just make it a priority and start.
Totally. I want to ask you, Hilary, you work with like hundreds of families, like many more children. Have you seen the change in kids, or like the difference in kids once they start being a part of your school of lunch programs?
Yeah, it's so beautiful to watch. I mean, usually like the first couple of weeks, especially the little 5-year-olds are like, like they're not used to a shepherd's pie or a pasta bolognese. They want their mac and cheese or their, comfort foods. And the parents are kind of like, is my kid going to eat this, or the teachers? And then I just say, give me 2 weeks with these kids. And it's really, more, we're at a point, I feel like, in humanity where we really can't just drop off healthy food and expect kids to eat it. There has to be like a retraining of, what's normal to make this way of eating normalized, and a retraining of the taste buds. Right. And so making it fun, having that connection, we stand there every single day and look these kids in the eye, and we're singing and dancing with them and getting to try a little dot of a new salad dressing or whatever it is. And, they right there's like, there's this really beautiful, healthy peer pressure going on from the kids on either side of them. And then they have their soul chefs or school of lunch chefs that are encouraging them. And so it becomes this fun, joyful experience where there's no real shame. It's just like, let's let's try new things and you might like it. And then more often than not, their eyes light up and they're like, I do like it. I mean, they have little kids eating fermented foods like crazy, and bone broths and organ meats and chicken skin, and it's us adults who have this preconceived notion that they're not going to like pate or they're not going to like liver or whatever. So we just have to get out of our own way and just serve up this beautiful variety and let them experience it, right? And so it's like, yeah, the kids seem very connected. They're out in nature all day, which makes a huge difference too, but there's not a lot of like moping around or behavioral issues. And there was one kid, we have a video on our website that's like a 12-minute video that shows kind of what we're doing at the school. And there was a little boy in 6th grade who said, unprompted, his hand, he's like, I used to feel like this, up and down all day long, up and down. And now I just feel like this, straight across. Uh-huh. And I was just like, boom, that's our 30-second commercial right there, because he expressed like he feels stable energy, right? He's satiated. And that's what we aim. We have these kids' stomachs for 6 hours a day. So that opportunity to really change the trajectory of their health is so massive. So for him to be able to understand that feeling of what it feels like to feel good is just the most valuable tool, right? Like I said, I think I said before, people don't know what it feels like to feel good. So even if they go off to college, I'm experiencing that with my own kids now. I'm like, oh man, this is depressing. But they know that they have that foundation of health. They have that toolkit. They know what it feels like to feel good. And so, as painful as it is to watch them have not really any good options or to have to make choices, they hopefully will be able to return back to, like my son just came back and he's like, I'm going to get some bones to have bone marrow. I'm like, all right, right on, but it's hard. It's like, they're out there in the world and, most of the kids aren't awake to this. And so there's a lot of like just junk out there. And I'm just like, don't let go of what you have, like we've seen it with their dad and his health. And it's like, it's just, you got to cherish what you have. To have a healthy body is you're richer than the richest man. You're way richer than Bill Gates if you have your health. Because when you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And what's the point, right? So
yeah. I love it. And I think it's just, just kind of as a more of like a closing thought to just like what you were saying is food is meant to be our fuel and medicine. And so we live in this culture where not just is the food the opposite or what we're calling food. To me, it's not even real food. Mm-hmm. And you've said this a few times now, like where most people don't even know what it is to feel good. And they just deal with the fact that they are a roller coaster, like that little boy going up and down and how they feel, or like the crash in the middle of the day. And the solution is go grab a coffee or have like a chocolate bar to spike your sugar to get more energy, right? Or have an energy drink, which those things like lethal, like those are the worst things to be having. Or like vitamin water, where we hear vitamin water and we're like, wow, that's amazing. But I'm like, I call it cancer water because it's got like 50 grams of sugar in it. And I'm like, that's there's nothing beneficial about that. Or that Prime stuff that one boxer guy, and he's being sued right now because of all of the adverse health effects it's having on people, right? So like we live in such a society where even if we don't feel good, nobody's telling us like that's not normal, and everything basically.
They're telling you it is normal. Right. Oh, that's just normal. We have a pill for that. But people have to recognize there's no magic pill. There's no magic pill. There's no magic bar. There's no magic energy drink. There's no, the magic is what nature provides. Yeah. And it's that simple. So it's really like, and then that satiety level, there's a lot of anti-meat narrative right now and propaganda around that. And I want to just encourage people to think twice before you think, I see these kids blowing with the wind all the time. They watch a documentary and they're like, I'm going to give up meat to save the planet. I'm like, okay, first of all, another massive point is that in agriculture, in all agriculture, there's death. So none of us are getting out of this unscathed. When you think about industrial, combines going through harvesting wheat or soy or corn, there's millions of animals that are decimated. Birds and gophers and bunny rabbits and snakes and habitats are destroyed. So we have to think about the life cycle, and that with the act of eating comes death. And so when we step into the act of eating with gratitude, that's what we can do, right? And do the best we can to give the animals the best life, one bad day, and be so grateful for that loss of life to nourish our own. And so I just really encourage people to kind of like take the blinders off and just try, and when you're looking at a product in the store, first of all, read the labels, because you think it's a loaf of bread and it's just flour, water, and salt, and there's like 500 ingredients in there. You think it's a can of beans, and there's sugar, tons of sugar in it. So you have to be really smart about, sourcing your food and stuff. So just really start to awaken to this like facade of what's happening. It's not real. It's not, but it's happening at a fast pace. So we have to really kind of step back and take a moment. Like I say, with like a diagnosis, like it didn't come overnight. It's not going to kill you overnight, and you're not going to fix it overnight. So just take a moment before you like run right into whatever your doctor's recommending, and just breathe into it. Feel into what's right for you. Try to ask questions, and there's no rush. It's like, just at this point, just take a step back with your family and decide how you're going to move forward and prioritize your health for the future generations, right?
Yeah.
You have to.
I know I said like closing thought, but I'm like, I want to spend a few more minutes, because as you're talking, I'm like, this is so good. And I think this is so important, because even in saying like sourcing your food, I want to take it a step further, because it's not even just about like where your food is coming from, but understanding what those farmers are feeding the animals. And there's a fantastic book by Dr. Gundry that I read years ago that I'm sure The Plant Paradox. And it was the first time I'd ever heard it positioned like this, where we always say you are what you eat. And he positioned it saying you are what that animal eats. And it couldn't be more true, because when you go to the grocery store and you see that meat, even if it says like no antibiotics on it, okay, or like no hormones added, like that's a one step in the right direction, yes. But there's a very good chance that, well, I'm going to say almost like 100% chance that if it doesn't say grass fed and grass finished, which is a very key word, it has to say grass finished, that you're eating an animal that has consumed grains and soy that our bodies shouldn't be consuming. That's also layered with the pesticides and all kinds of stuff that is toxin to our bodies, And so that strips, and we talked about this earlier when we're talking about the raw milk versus pasteurized, where it's like you're stripping all of the good stuff out of that meat. And it's like, no wonder why you could still eat something like a steak or like chicken and still not feel like it actually did anything, like there's no nutritional value. And so sometimes I can understand why some people will say, well, I'm giving up meat for the environment, but also then X, Y, and Z, there's no nutritional value in it for our bodies, when I'm like, there's so much. You were talking about animal fat earlier, and like there's so much goodness in it, but it goes again to not just the source, but then like, what are those farmers feeding their livestock? And that really matters, for our bodies. So
yeah, I think that actually having any meat is better than no meat at all. So I think people meet people where they are. Like, don't get hung up if you can't get grass-fed, grass-finished. And most cows are on pasture for the majority of their life, even if they spend the end at a quote-unquote feedlot. They still are out on pasture for most of their lives. And the nutritional benefits of that protein is so important for growing, developing bodies. And so to take that away from children, I think is criminal. And so to just advise people to just do your best, get the best meat you can afford, and then, kind of keep moving on your journey to improve. And then, of course, the more you can know your farmer and ask those questions and see the farm and see the animals, the more it's a process. It's a process. So I just want to encourage people to not get discouraged if you can't find things or you can't afford things right away. It's just really important, I think. And actually, Diana Rogers is a friend of mine who wrote the book Sacred Cow and produced that movie. And that's an excellent book and movie for people to watch if they're looking for the narrative around meat and, the social justice aspects of it, the nutritional aspects. Like, it's really important.
I'll add that in the show notes.
Yeah. She's a wealth of information.
Yeah. And, you had pointed this out earlier. The point is just to start, and as you go on your journey, you just start stacking, you start layering, and then you start advancing your process, around that. And you just learn more. And as you learn more, I think, you start doing better,
when you know better, you do better.
Exactly.
Right? And just don't put the blinders on. Like, I can remember going to Seafood Inc. a long time ago, I don't know, with my in-laws and my parents, and thinking like, oh, they're just going to get it. And it was sort of like, you can see all the factory farms and all these things, but it's so painful to see, and so it's easier just to like not know. Right. But we have to just start to have that awareness. And I think awareness is the number one thing. So then you like start to question when you're making choices and which choice do you want to make, and trusting your intuition. And so it's really like what you're doing. And, the more we all talk about this in a, non-shaming way, just an empowering way of just like taking control of your health, that like freedom that your freedom CEO, it's like you have freedom when you have that sovereignty and you make the choices that are best for your body. When you have your health, you have freedom, right? You're not beholden to big pharma and, living your life in a hospital bed. That's not freedom, right? Totally. So, and that fear can take over when you get a diagnosis. So just understand also that your body is miraculous and it is always heading towards homeostasis. My friend said, you cut your finger and you don't tell your body to like scab over and clot and heal or whatever. It just does it. Your body knows what to do. So when you feed it the right things and you get sunshine and water, it's not just food. Like, food is so foundational, but we really encourage people to have the, the other tenets of health, the movement and the sunshine, the water and the sleep and community. That's all so important for our vitality, right? So just trust your body and get out from behind the screens, get out into nature, and really just take a deep breath and just keep moving forward.
I love it. Hilary, I could talk to you all day.
We can geek out over this.
So good. Like, definitely we need to do a part 2. And I think everybody will agree with me as well. This is just such an important topic. And I'm so grateful for somebody like you that's not just at an adult level, but like with the kids and raising up the next generation to have a whole different viewpoint and perspective on food and what nutrition is. So thank you for the work you're doing. I appreciate you coming on today. Just share with us, what is the best way people can connect with you? What's the best way people can connect?
School of Lunch on Instagram. That's where I am pretty much, every day, kind of doing stories or reels or whatever, and showing what we're up to. And schooloflunch.com. You can go to our website and see all that we have going on. We run 2 training academies across the summer. The first one's full, but the second one, July 28th through August 2nd, still has openings, and that's a 5-night intensive. We do have somebody from Canada coming. So it's about really learning these tenets of health and these systems that you can implement into your home or whatever you want to do with this information. We have people going into churches, into businesses, into schools, just, feeding the next generation, however you want to do it. You're going to learn about homemade sourdough and bone broth and fermented foods and organ meats and going to the farmer's market, how to ask the right questions, raw dairy, all these beautiful things, and then breath work and cold plunging and movement, all these things. So we invite people to ask questions, DM me on Instagram or shoot me an email. We're actually creating more online content as well that will be coming out. So stay tuned, and just ask questions and, reach out anytime. I'm happy to help people. And then the Heal Your Gut cookbook is my cookbook that is a great resource for, taking back your health and reversing chronic conditions.
Awesome. Thanks, Hilary. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning into the Freedom CEO podcast. If you got value out of today's show, I would love for you to leave a review, as it will help my show reach other people as well. You know what to do. Download this episode, click the like and subscribe button. If you feel like spreading more love, hop over to Instagram and share today's show in your stories.
remember to tag Shae Invidiata and the Freedom CEO. My DMs are always open, so drop me a line. I'd love to connect. Until next time, keep owning your decisions to live a life of freedom. Live a life you love.